Greetings, brothers and sisters. Hello and welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I'm Eva Maria, your Monday hostess for this season, and our topic this week is going to be using what you've got. We're going to be discussing the power and potential, the usefulness in things that you may discover, harvest, and utilize locally. Local can mean many things. Now, local can be what's available in the stores in your area, because that's going to differ from place to place. Local can mean what is readily available around your property or in your home already, or locally can mean what is abundant in the natural settings in and around where you live, okay? There is, I believe, power and potential in all things. Magic is everywhere. Anything can be utilized for magic. I don't feel that only natural items are magical. I feel that even man-made things, even synthetic things, have a power and potential all their own. Some may disagree with me, and you're fine to disagree with me if you do. I'm just sharing what I personally believe. I believe that anything, all things, if you really think about it, if you can sort of pinpoint the symbolism, and if you can attribute a meaning that you genuinely feel in regard to that item, you can find a use for anything, magically or spiritually speaking. Now, with that said, I want to shift our focus to talk a little bit more about natural things. One thing, actually two things that I strongly suggest. I'm going to share these with you in regard to sourcing from nature. I do feel it's important to be mindful of ecology and to be respectful of nature. And therefore, I feel that if you're going to source things from nature, you should take only what you need. The main reason behind my feeling in regard to this is that you don't want to deplete sources of things that you gather, because that could offset the ecology. And also, you don't want to deplete the sources of what you're gathering, because then if you need that again and you're going to go back and get that, it might not be there for you. So be mindful. For example, if you're harvesting herbs, don't take all of it, take some. Take only what you need. If you're gathering a certain kind of stone, don't go nuts and collect every piece that you possibly can. Take only what you need. Because if everyone approached gathering or sourcing from nature in the respect that, they just took whatever and just went crazy, things can get depleted. I mean, it may seem far-fetched because you're just one person, but, maybe err on the side of caution and take only what you need. And besides, it's respectful, Take only what you need. That's why I strongly suggest that. Take only what you need. And I also suggest, if you're going to take something, leave something in return. But be sure that what you leave in return for the things you take is something that is biodegradable or useful to nature, something that belongs in nature. If you're going to leave food, make sure that it's not wrapped in any kind of synthetic wrappers. If it is when you buy it or get it, then take it out of the wrapper and put it outside. But there are other things you can leave, if you're not leaving food for wildlife, for example, let's say you're outsourcing stones, but let's say you have stones already at home that you collected a long while ago, but you don't use anymore. They really just sit on your shelf. They don't do anything. You're really not attached to them. Well, maybe leave those or some of those, like a piece for a piece, leave some out there if you're going to take some new stones home. Because that kind of keeps a balance going. It keeps things very much in balance. And it is important, I feel, to help nature to maintain a balance in itself. Now, with all this in mind, and still on the topic of natural items, I'd like to discuss some ways in which we can utilize local things, natural things, in respect to tools. Now, I know and I agree with the sentiment, the thought, the belief that many of us do have that you really don't need tools. Tools are helpful, but they are not necessary. But at the same time, a lot of us do prefer to use tools, to use external focal points and things that help us to get into the proper mindset, the right headspace and emotional place that we can affect change in reality through will. And therefore, I want to discuss what natural items you could potentially use for tools if you want to use natural, locally sourced things. Now, most of us are aware of the simple idea that if you want a wand, you can use a branch. You can create your own wand. That's fairly common, not necessarily knowledge, but I think most of us have had that idea, come upon that idea. Now, as for an athame, athames don't have to really be knives. A lot of times, there are some people, some practitioners that don't even use athames. Some practitioners will use, for example, their finger in place of the athame. But a piece of fallen antler could be used as an athame, or perhaps a shard of slate or other flat, sort of pointy stone. I will say, though, by the way, if you're going to be using slate or something like obsidian or some sharp sort of stone, and you're seeking to create your own athame, be very careful if you're going to try to chip it or break it yourself. Story time! When I was a kid, I forget how old I was exactly. I want to say, I think I was around 9 years old. I had a piece of slate, and for some reason I wanted to break this piece of slate. So there were like these concrete steps in my mother's garden, and I put the slate, hanging off the top step, and my idea was stand on the top step and then kick down and the slate should break. Oh my God, worst idea ever. The slate broke all right, but now my one foot's here and my other foot's here, and as I kicked down to break the slate, there was a sharp edge here and it cut into my ankle, and I still have a scar on my ankle from breaking that slate. I'm pretty sure I do. I haven't actually looked for the scar lately. It may be a lot lighter than it was years ago, but I had a scar. It was pretty deep, and it was not fun or pretty. So do be careful if you're going to be chipping slate or obsidian or any kind of like sharp stone, any kind of flat stone that's kind of like chippable or breakable. Just take care, be very careful. Also, if you're going to be utilizing something like obsidian or slate or some sort of natural, sort of sharpish, pointyish stone, you may want to wrap one side of this sort of DIY athame in case there are any sharp edges, on the part that you're going to be holding. You could wrap it in either cloth, or maybe you could get some like leather strip of some sort somewhere from a store locally or whatever, or I don't know. There's many, excuse me, there's many options of what you could use to wrap the handle, but wrapping the handle might be something that you might want to do. Anywho, for a pentacle, not the one you wear around your neck, the one that goes on your altar, for those that use that, you could use a nice flat stone. You can either etch on the stone, or you can paint on the stone and then seal it with some clear coat. Or, you don't have to seal it, but you can paint on it. Or I've used actually Sharpie on flat stones before in the past to create pentacles. I find personally that Sharpie works well, but you can use, you know, paint or whatever you want to use. Or you could use a slice of a log. You can use that and you can either, you know, burn in with a wood burning tool the pentacle design, or you could paint it on, or you could carve it in. There's a lot of options, but yeah, you know, either you could use a flat stone or you could use a slice of log for a pentacle. For incense burners, there are many options here. You could use, for example, a shell. Sometimes I find the ones that are curly, there are points in the shell where you can kind of, if you're using stick incense, you can kind of like work the stick in there and it'll kind of hold the stick, you know, upright. Or, you know, you could also use like the flatter shells, like clam shells and such. You can put cone incense in there. Sometimes though with the heat, they sometimes crack though. You have to be mindful of that. Or you could use, for example, a flat stone for cone incense. Or, you know, a flat, fairly thick stone you can use for using charcoal and loose incense. Or you could use, for example, a piece of coral if the holes are deep enough and you can work a stick incense into the holes and it will stand up. You can use a piece of coral, or maybe even a piece of like lava if it has slightly bigger holes that go in a bit. I have a black piece of lava like that I use for my Tibetan incense. I just kind of, one day I was looking at it and I was like, you know, and then I tried it out and I was like, that's a really good incense holder for my Tibetan incense. Or you could just use a container of soil or sand to stand your sticks in, or to sit your cones on, you know, or even to sit your charcoal and your loose incense on. That's a really good one, a really good idea, you know, using sand or soil. Candle holders. If you're using pillar candles, you can use flat stones, or even for votives, you know, you can use flat stones. You might want to also, though, sit your stone in some sort of a dish or in something that can kind of catch any run over if there is. Tea lights you can sit in shells. Chimes or tapers, if you're careful, you can use a smaller candle as a, or another candle as a lighting candle, where you light the candle you're not actually working with and you drip wax onto whatever it is you want to fix your candle to, and then you stand the candle there until the wax gets cool, and then it's like, okay, it's attached, you can let go and it'll stand, and then you can use the extra candle also to light your candle that you're working with. But do take care though. Do take care if you're going to be using tapers or chimes like that with a flat stone, because if you don't affix them right, they can certainly fall over. And as always, folks, I'm going to reiterate, please don't leave your candles burning unattended. If I had a quarter for every story I have heard from a fellow magical practitioner about unattended candles and really bad things happening, I would be rich right now. Okay? For salt or water or offering dishes, naturally, cup-like shells could be used for these, or for example, for offering dishes, you could use like either a piece of slate or a flat stone, something of that sort. If you're going to make divinatory tools, for example, like Teutonic runes or witches' runes, you could use slices of a branch, you know, so that they make like little round slices. You can use those and then either wood burn, using a wood burning tool, you know, the symbols on there, or you could, again, paint or etch, carve, whatever, into the little slices of branch, or you could use stones. For Ogham fuse, you can use, you know, little branches that are small enough that they're of a manageable size, but big enough that you can carve or paint or burn in the symbols. You know, you don't want them to be like little itty bitty bitty twigs where you can't write on them. You want them to be at least of a size that they're usable, you know. So these are just some suggestions, some ideas of things that you could use for certain tools. I've made an incense burner out of a cat food can, if I'm not mistaken. That was in one of the past seasons here at Witches of the Moon. I showed that as a tutorial. I just, basically what I did is I used shelf paper, decorated around the outside of the empty cat food can. You know, of course I washed the can out. And I used a hammer and a nail, and I made some little holes on the top of the can. And the holes, the can would be sitting upside down, of course, for use as an incense burner. The holes in the bottom of the can, I made like 4 holes at equal points, and the incense sticks, they could stand in the little holes, or if I wanted to do a cone, I could stand that in the center of the upside down can. And I still use it. I mean, I use it all the time, you know. I even went back and made a bigger hole to hold Tibetan incense in there. So now I have 3 options, 3 different kinds of incense I can use that burner for. As for what I was saying before about ogham fuse, hey, if your dollar store sells popsicle sticks, or if you eat ice cream pops and you have the plain popsicle sticks, save them up, wash them off, make your ogham fuse with those. You know, there are so many things you can use locally. One thing I do encourage a lot, and I practice a lot, is knowing the uses, the magical and medicinal uses of kitchen herbs. Herbs that are easily, readily available in your supermarket. You know, things like basil, oregano, thyme, rosemary, you know, the things you cook with. They're not just spices. You can do so much with these. It helps to know, you know, about the herbs that are readily available in your supermarket. Also, it helps if you come to learn about the natural plants and herbs and even weeds, because believe it or not, weeds, they're not bad. They're just wild plants. If you learn about the plants that grow naturally in your area, you know, whether it be for medicinal or magical purposes, if you really do learn, and I suggest please do your research, you know, be sure that you are very careful in sourcing herbs from nature, because sometimes there are lookalikes. For example, I'm going to tell you one with purslane that grows wild. There is a plant, I forgot the exact name of it, but it's often referred to as scourge, I believe. Scourge. They look very, very, very much alike. But purslane won't hurt you. Scourge is not something you want to be eating. You know, so be very careful. If you're going to source a plant and you're pretty sure what it is, do some research. See if the plant that you're looking to source has any lookalikes, because that happens. There are some lookalike plants out there. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. What I meant to say originally, before I kind of went off on my little tangent about safety, is if you learn about your natural, you know, plant life, that opens up a whole plethora of potential of, you know, resources for you, magically and medicinally, in an herbal sense. You can also learn about the natural geology in your area. You know, some places there's a lot of natural quartz, but it's not going to look like the quartz that you buy in the metaphysical shop. Not all quartz comes in beautiful terminations, you know. Recently I sourced quartz from Pennsylvania, where they just look like these clustery, sharp, kind of jagged little rocks. But if you looked in the rocks, there were like terminated parts that like grew in the rock. You know, there were quartz points growing inside the rock, but it was like, and it was all quartz, it was just the way that it grew. Like, I can't even explain it to you. Then I found quartz that the whole rock looked kind of snowy. It's not all quartz is clear, you know. Also, sometimes you'll find things like iron ore, you know, like raw iron. I get that a lot in the soil here where I live. You know, I have this one piece, it's this huge chunk, and it's heavy. It is so heavy, but it's iron, and it's just awesome, you know. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. Have an open mind. Use what you've got. There is so much readily available to you. Naturally, in your supermarkets, in your house, even in your junk drawer, little trinkets, you know, junk keys. Well, those are great for opening up opportunities for yourself. Plastic Easter eggs. Yeah, well, you can use those for fertility work. You can use those for sort of like the way that you would work a box spell, but you'd work it in a plastic Easter egg. Glue traps, the kinds that I personally don't approve of using, you know, glue traps to kill mice, but, you know, glue traps, they can be used magically, particularly for stopping progress. If someone is progressing in a way that is a threat to you, you can stop their progress using a glue trap. There are many things that you can do. So many things. The sky's the limit. As I said before, symbolism matters. Meaning matters. Psychological triggering ultimately matters. And I could go on and on and on about this topic, but really I'm here just to introduce the topic. So I am going to wrap this video up at this point and give the other hosts, I'm going to give them the floor now to come forward with their videos and share with you their perspectives and what they have to speak on in regard to this topic. So I'm going to wish you blessed be and ashe. You have a great night, and until our next exchange, consider what is around you. Consider the power and potential of what is local to you. Again, in your supermarkets, in your area, in nature, on your property around where you live, in any kind of natural settings, parks, whatever, or even in your home right now. Consider the power and potential around you. Think about it, folks. You may be surprised what little light bulbs go off in your head. Okay? So until next time, until our next exchange, stay awesome, and bye-bye for now.